Okay, so before we start, reminder that this is called Chumash Exploration and not Chumash Shir, because I can't guarantee ideas. Okay, so I'm going to state what the objective is of this, and it's going to seem extremely huge, and then we're going to narrow it, and then I think the Rav is going to expand it more. Because that's that's my last minute addition. I actually have the Rav over here. Yeah, we'll save him for later. Okay, so the stated objective of the shir basically is like, how are we supposed to respond to bad things that happen to us?
That's funny. I had a question in the opposite side.
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of like general Mahakam in that regard.
Yeah.
I don't really know how to respond to.
Yeah, it's funny. Similarly, in the question of Tzaddik Varalo and Rasha Tovlo, people focus way more on Tzaddik Varalo than on Rasha Tovlo. Yeah, they do go together. Right. So this might shed light on that question also. At least according to one of the Mefarshim we do. Okay.
Well, is it obvious that something bad's happening to you? It's because Satan and God are arguing about it.
That is the answer, right? You don't need to read past the sixth pasuk. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. The answer is it's true, if you understand that allegory. But okay, yeah. Oh, so that's where I'm kind of drawing the line. That obviously the book that deals with this question at length is Eov. And obviously whatever we do here is not going to be covering the entire scope. But what I want to do here, and the reason why I say this is going to narrow the scope, is I wanted to look at this question through two specific examples of it in last week's parashah and this week's parashah, through the eyes of the Mefarshim. And I want to see if we can like skirt this line of, can we get ideas just from these two incidents without feeling like we have to tackle the entire sugya to get them. Okay, but then the Rav in this book that I just am reading like this week is gonna like universalize it again at the end. Okay, so that's kind of the sketch. Okay, so we'll see what we get. Okay, so the sugya we're starting off with is in last week's parsha, which is Vayeishev, right? That was last week.
Yeah.
This week is Mikeitz. Okay, fine. Yeah. So this is Bereshis Lamites. We're only going to read Pesukim Vav through Zion. This is the Yosef Potiphar thing. Okay, so the setting is Yosef rises in the house of Potiphar, everything's successful, and then Pasuk Vav says, "Vayazov kol asher lo biad Yosef." So Potiphar like gave over everything into the hand of Yosef. V'lo yada ito uma ki im halechem asher hu ochel, and he didn't know with him anything except for the bread that he ate. Okay. What's pshat in that?
Oh, what, in the bread part?
Yeah, the bread part.
The bread part, Rashi says is Potiphar's wife.
So Rashi says it's Potiphar's wife, basically that he entrusted Yosef with everything except for his wife. And the reason why he says that is because he uses a similar phrase later on when Yosef is arguing with Potiphar's wife, and he says, like, the only thing that he has not given me is you, or whatever. The only thing that whatever. Okay, but
it's a
no, right, it's a euphemism, right? So Avram and Rambam says basically like, the way what it means is Yosef was in charge of everything in the house except Potiphar like handled his own food or whatever, and some people want to say that that's because the Egyptians had this thing with eating with the Hebrews, whatever. Okay, we're not going to get into that. Just want to go over pshat. Okay, so then it says like this: Vayehi Yosef Yifei Sar V'Yifei Mar'eh, and Yosef was beautiful in form and beautiful in appearance. Okay. Then Vayhi Achar Hadvarim Ha'eleh, and it was after these things, Bakisa Eshes Adonav Es Eineha, that the wife of his master lifted her eyes El Yosef towards Yosef, Vatomer Shifa Imi, and she said, "Sleep with me." Okay, and then it goes through the whole seduction thing. Okay, yeah. So this whole thing started off with me reading the Rashi, and I think in your source sheet it's reversed. Okay, I put Avram and Ram and then Rashi. So let's start off with the Rashi, and I feel like this is like a known thing. Okay, so Rashi says, "Vayehi Yosef Yifei Sar V'Yifei Mar'eh," and Yosef was beautiful in form and beautiful of appearance. Kaven Shira Atmo Moshe, once he saw himself like in a position of power, Hischil Ochel V'Shosa Umesalso B'Se'aro. He began eating and drinking and combing his hair, literally smoothing his hair. I was wondering if it was a thing like he had a Jufro and he like got his hair straightened. I don't know if that was like a thing that they did in Egypt, because Masalso literally means to smooth out, whatever. He started like pampering, like fussing with his appearance. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu. So God said, "Avicha misabel v'ata masalsal b'sarecha." Your father is in mourning and you're combing your hair. Ani magar b'cha es hadov. I'm going to send the bear at you. I don't know why it calls her a bear. Okay. Miyad, immediately, Vatisa Eshes Adonav v'gomer. So immediately she lifted her eyes towards him. Okay. So plain shot, or it's not plain shot. According to Rashi, he was like, this was going to his head and it affected his head, and then that's what do you call it, got her to notice him. Okay. But what question is Rashi responding to here? Like, what's bothering Rashi that forces him to say this?
I'd assume what's the connection between the two psukim, I guess.
Okay, so one is you could say what's the connection between the two psukim.
Why is it mentioning the thing about
Yeah, I think that's the question that Rashi is responding to, is why does it mention here that Yosef was handsome, right? Now, there's a very simple answer to why it mentions here that Yosef is handsome.
No.
Because now it's relevant, okay, right? So if you look at Avram ben Rambam says, "V'Yosef Yifei Soar v'Gomer in Tamo Kizen Nischadish Lo Beves Adonav." The meaning is not that this was a new state that occurred in the house of his master. Ella Zehaya Matavo Hativi. This was his natural state, right? He was born handsome. Okay, no, he was naturally handsome, and they connected to what's the other usage of that phrase? Rachel, right? She was Yafa Torah, Yafa Mar'eh, or whatever.
Yeah,
same phrase, right? So they say he took after his mother. Ulefi shelo hizkir bo ezeh lifnei chen hizkir kan, and the reason why I didn't mention this beforehand, and it did mention it here, k'dei levar es hasiba shenizkaka lo eshes adonav, is to explain the reason why his wife took notice of him. Yeah. Yeah, right. Correct, right. It's not that she suddenly became beautiful. Right. Right. Exactly. Right. Now, I think that this is plain shot, right? I don't think I think it's more of a forced read to say that he suddenly became beautiful, and to posit that he started messing with his appearance. There are some, by the way, who want to say, I think it was the Portrayed, who want to say he became handsome and beautiful, but not that he did himself up. It was that basically, when he got sold to Mitzrayim, he was in a state of depression and mourning over losing his family, and so he looked ugly. But then as he got used to the norm, then his appearance returned. So they're not blaming him, but they're saying that it was just over time. Yeah.
Doesn't Rashi say even earlier on he was always
right? So yeah, when he was a youth, right? Exactly. Yeah. So it is interesting that that it is, I guess, a trend of his, right? But this sounds like a different kind of beautifying himself. That sounds just like a youthful being into his looks. This sounds like a social prominence thing, because it says Kevin Ra'a Atmo Moshel. Once he saw himself as a ruler, he's prominent in the house, then he started to care about his looks. So it might be just a further, I don't want to call it a development. I don't mean development in a positive way. I mean it's a further
natural development, though.
Progression. Right. I mean he already cares about his appearance, and it manifests itself in this new way here. Yeah.
I think that would just make sense, though, because if he wants to command respect, he can't just be this
right
guy. And as the master servant of the house,
Right. So were you saying that, Ellie, because you're saying that it is consistent with the pshat?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's true if you hold that the beautification thing earlier on is the pshat, right? Because that's also
I don't know. I mean, this one here, I guess it seems to imply in the public.
Right. So there is one thing you can. So if you said that the nar thing, beautifying himself, is pshat, then you could say that this is somewhat in line with the pshat. But it's not pshat, right? This is Rashi pshat.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can also say, and I don't know enough grammar to say this. I've heard, in fact, we did this in the Kain and Hevel shir, that I think Vayehi means he became. Vayehi Yosef Yifei Soar V'Yifei Mar'eh, as opposed to Vahaya Yosef Yifei Soar V'Yifei Mar'eh. But Avram Ben Aram doesn't accept that, and he's a shop guy. So I don't know if that's like a solid thing. Okay, but now once I was looking at Avram Ben Aram, I noticed something else. Okay, next thing, when it says that the wife of his master lifted her eyes, Hainu shegavra ta'avasa elav. It means that her taiva overpowered itself towards him. Okay. Asher bishvila haisa mechazeres lihistapel bo avur yofio. That she would like try to find excuses to check him out, to check out his beauty. Okay. Lo shumuvan ze he lo ra'as oso livnekain. This does not mean that she didn't see him beforehand. Okay, so according to Rashi, why does it say that she lifted her eyes to see him?
Because he was in a different state of handsome.
Yeah, is that he actually made himself look different, and that's what made her notice him. This is just that her taiva overpowered her. Okay, and if you actually, there's another Avram Ben Aram that is not on your source sheet. Yeah, see, this is. There's a whole graveyard of abandoned shirim that I have that didn't work out. So this was one of them. So this was part of the other shir. So her taiva overpowered her. And then when he says to her, Lo chasach mimeni me'uma, that your husband hasn't withheld anything from me, he says, Ein tam Moshe mana oso mizev, he's here oso alzeh. It doesn't mean that Potiphar warned him explicitly about not getting with his wife. Elatam Moshe kin aso alzeh yudua. Rather, it means that his jealousy on behalf of his own wife was known. Even though he hadn't explained it. That intellect and nature and custom prevent him from this. And even this is a different Avram Ben Aram. Avram Ben Aram goes on and says basically that she was being very, very irrationally forward with her advances, that she was demanding it bapet, like she was saying sleep with me, which is like violating like even their standards of sneus or whatever. And she was the fact that she was interested in a slave was also like a big no-no. I guess it wasn't like American slavery where like masters, well actually I don't know if in American slavery, I don't think mistresses slept with the slaves, right? I've never heard that was the thing. I don't know. At least it's not as known as the other thing. So yeah, right. So here's what intrigued me, okay? According to Avram Ben Rambam, Yosef is never portrayed as being at fault. Okay, he's just there. He's just naturally handsome, and she just her taiva overpowers her, and she goes after him, and he tries to resist her advances. Okay, according to Rashi, though, he was at fault for this because he was interested in his appearance, and it seems like there's also a criticism here of the way he's reacting to his father's mourning. Right, Avicha misabel, which also is a whole other sugya that I took up and abandoned because I couldn't find anything solid for a shir. Is like, why didn't he send like message to his father that he was still alive? Yeah, that's the whole thing that people take out. Like some say, like, oh, he knew that in order for the dreams to come true, then like he had whatever. That's a whole thing, But Rashi's not the only one who says this. There's a whole genre of midrashim that the Netziv quotes a midrash that. Basically, that Yosef, yeah. Sorry, doesn't that presuppose that Yosef? So I guess the word misabel might say that, but he surely knows that Yaakov is wondering what suddenly happened to my only son. Like there's some insensitivity to his father. Okay, that could be. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, right. But I don't know. Like send word at least. Okay, whatever. So there's a midrash in the Siv quotes, which I didn't bring here because.
Yeah, but mine brother.
Yeah, that's a whole other issue, right? What did the brothers know and what didn't they know? Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so it's not so clear who sold him and who knew about it. And in fact, in this week's part, yeah. All right, whatever. That's a whole other subject. I didn't post that in this chat, I guess. Okay, yeah, I'll have to post it. Yeah.
I'm like,
A lot of chats going on.
who's the one on the pit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a whole thing with everybody's airing last year on that.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, so there's a midrash that the Netziv quotes that says that Yosef was neglectful of his Torah, and if he had learned Torah during this time, then he wouldn't have attracted he wouldn't have gotten into this whole mess with Vayeishev Potiphar. There's another midrash that says that he was boasting about the fact, he says, my grandfather had a nisayon and my father had a nisayon, but I haven't had a nisayon. And God says, oh, you want a nisayon? And then he sent Vayeishev Potiphar.
He's not a prison yet, right?
Right. Then there's another midrash that says basically that that he was publicly flaunting his looks.
Yeah. Walk around and
Right. So right. So this Rashi is a stand-in for all those midrashim. Okay. There are midrashim who say that he was at fault for this. And then you have the Pshat Mefarshim like Avram and Ramam who basically say, no, like she came after him and like he wasn't at fault. And then I saw the Radak. Okay. And the Radak is just coming out of left field. And this is not the Radak that I know. Okay. You'll see what he says. All right. He says like this, Vayhi achar hadvarim ha'eleh. Achar zman, at a later time, Shai Yosef beis HaMitzri, when Yosef was in the house of the Egyptian, Gadol v'nechba, and he was prominent, V'yoshev levetach, and he was sitting securely, Hiukizehu devar Eshes Potiphar. So the matter of Eshes Potiphar was incited against him. V'hakol hayasiva l'tovaso u'letovas avi v'echav. And this ended up being for his good, and for the good of his father and the good of his brothers. Even though it was harsh at first, it ended up being good. Same thing with the sin of the cupbearer and the baker and the dream of Paro. I think it's supposed to say Lugdula. That all of this was arranged by God so that Yosef would arise to prominence. Okay, now he says two reasons why the story was written. One, the Nichtav HaSipur Hazeh Lahodia Sibas HaDevarim. This was the story was written to make known the causes of these matters, and I think this is part of the same reason. V'im yikra la'adam shum mikra. If some chance occurrence occurs to a person, yivtach bakel, he should trust in God. V'yeda shesofa l'tov, and know that it's going to end up being good. Okay, so this is like a gamzu l'tova idea, right? Now the problem with that is, in Yosef's case, he had a nevuah that said he was going to become prominent, and he was under the hashgacha, and this was like, with the, in the realm of the avos. So like, is this really true of every mikra that, you should think that's going to end up being for your good? I mean, that's not when I say this is not the Radak that I know, this is, that there might be some sects of Judaism that hold that, that everything that happens to you is for your good. That's not what we hold in terms of, by we, I mean the Rishonim, like that everything is for your good, and there's a story of Nachum Ishkamzu, but like that has to be understood also, there's a great, okay, whatever. It's a story. I'm not gonna tell the story. Okay, tell the story. It's just not gonna be funny to anyone other than people who know Rabbi Fox. So someday you'll hear Rabbi Fox. Rabbi Fox was my high school Rebbe, thick, Pittsburgh accent, and also like a kind of idiosyncratic accent. So he was in yeshiva in the early days, and it's always fun to see people who were in yeshiva in the early days. This was back when Rebbe used to give shir on Shabbos, every Shabbos. So, people revere Rebbe, okay, but people who were like in the early days of yeshiva, when Rebbe was like a high school Rebbe to them, not literally, but they don't have that same like reverence. They talk to him like they talk to their high school, Rebbe, So Rabbi Fox would like speak to Rebbe in a very like almost like a chavrusa type manner, So they were arguing about this point, and like Rebbe was trying to give a svara based on this difficult, like, I think it was a Ruchaim, it was a long time ago, and Rabbi Fox was saying how that Rebbe's svara just doesn't make any sense, So Rebbe, like, they're going back and forth, and then finally, like, Rebbe says, but there's another, I think it was another Ruchaim or something like that, where like he gives a similar svara, and Rebbe is bringing it as a raya, and Rabbi Fox says, great. Now there are two things I don't understand, So like person can point to Nachamish Gamzu, but if you ever looked at that story, that's its own sugya, So I'm not going to go to Nachamish Gamzu, and again, we don't bring proofs from Midrashim, but according to the way that my understanding of Hashgacha works is we don't say that every single chance occurrence that happens to a person, mikra, is for their good, that really would be true for people who are like on the level of the avos, Okay. Then he says something else, which I'm just going to read for the sake of completeness. He says, "V'nichtav gamkein lahodia tzidko shel Yosef v'sheyilmad adam mimeno lichbosh es yitzro shelo yata ledvar avera." This is also written to teach the righteousness of Yosef and to teach a person that he should control his yetzer and not let it incline him towards any matter of avera. V'lishmor emuna l'mish boteach bo, and to preserve the trust of someone who trusts in him. I think that's Potiphar. No matter who it is, not lie to him. Okay, fine. So it's a moral lesson also. Okay. So now these three things is what I wanted to give Shir on last week. Okay, which is like you have Rashi blaming Yosef and all the Midrashim. Then you have Avram and Ramam not blaming Yosef, and the Psukim kind of read that way, like she just was attracted to him. And you have the Radak saying everything that happens is for your good. Okay. And I want to see what are we supposed to make of this? So let's say something like this happens to you, you're working in, in someone's house and what was it? Well, it's not just, it is Latov. Yeah. Oh, it was fine because he said Latova the second time, but the first time he says Latova so, Latovas aviv echa, which is more specific. Yeah.
Well, actually, we can general thing.
Yeah.
We're not like the total. But it won't happen to him, or it won't want him to do it.
That's a very good question. I think this is going to be part of it. Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So in context of the Radak, it does seem like it means that it ended up benefiting Aviv Echav and making Yosef get to prominence, but I think that your approach does have merit, which we'll see.
What's your back adding the first little couple lines?
This part
ends up being good. It's I can just read other two parakim of Chumash and I know that meaning is he adding it in and see that it was good because it all's well that ends well.
Well, he's saying that this is really why this.
Yeah, he's saying why the start of
this.
No. I'm saying the first two sentences of that
of the entire Radak, the Achazman,
yeah, that whole thing,
right.
I get it, it was bad at the beginning, and it was and it gets better, right?
Yeah.
But what's he?
Yeah, it is weird, right? Because he puts the emphasis on the fact that Yosef had it good and he was secure, and then this happened and it was really harsh, and ended up being good. Yeah, I don't know why he has to frame it that way.
He just seems to be consolidating the entire story in 2 lines to tell us that don't worry guys, it ends well.
I think maybe he is explaining Vayehi achar hadvarim ha'eleh. What dvarim ha'eleh, that things were going well. I think he's just responding to that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So now let's switch gears for a second and go to this week's parashah. Okay. Next page. This is after the brothers are accused of being spies and they are imprisoned. To think it over. Okay, then after 3 days, Vayomer Aleim Yosef, Vayom Hashlishi, Yosef said to them on the 3rd day, Zosos Vichir, this is what you should do and live. As Elokim Ani Yareh, I fear God. Just funny non sequitur there. Okay, Im Keni Matem, if you are truth tellers, right? That's Cain, I think. Like Cain, like from the word Cain, like if you are thusers. Yeah. One of your brothers, let him be imprisoned in the prison house. And you guys go and bring provisions to the people who are starving in your house. And bring your younger brother to me. And your words will be verified, and you will not die. And they shall do this. Is that they shall do this? And they did this? They did this, yeah. It's weird though, because they didn't quite do it yet. What was it? Does sound like they did it, but yeah. Okay. Okay, fine. So that's just setting the stage. Here's the puzzle that I wanted to get to. V'yomru ish al achiv. Each one said to his brother, "Aval ashemi v'nachnu," but we are guilty. Al achinu, for our brother, asher ra'inu tsaras nafsho, that we saw the affliction of his soul, bihischanano elenu, when he pleaded with us, v'lo shamanu, and we didn't listen to him. Al kain ba'a elenu hatsara hazos. Therefore, this tsara came to us.
Right.
Okay, and there are
strong right and kind of
exactly. It does sound like they're directly ascribing it to this Sarah, and they make several other statements which we're not going to go into tonight, but I put here just in case. Later on, when the money is returned to them, they say, "Mazos asa elokim lanu." What is this that God has done to us? And a lot of the Mepharshim say that is referring to the same type of thing. And then when the goblet is put in Binyamin's thing, then it says, Elokim matza es avon avadecha. God has found the sin of your servants. But we're just going to focus on the first thing. Okay, so they said, that the tsar has come upon us. Okay, so I just want to give you a tour of some of the Mefarshim. What is it that they saw that got them to know that this was a punishment? So they say different things. It's interesting. Rashbam says, Hasara Azos, Mida Keneged Mida. Okay, they saw this as measure. Anachnu hishlachnuhu babor. We threw him into the pit. Vihine anachnu ne'asarim bebeis hashavi. And we are thrown into jail. Okay, so based on what happened to us, then that's how we know it's Mida Keneged Mida.
Oh, interesting, because I don't know if the word that the Psukim use here when they get thrown in is bor, but I think when it talks about Yosef being thrown into jail, I think it uses the word bor also.
Yeah, here I think it sounds like he's saying beis hashavi.
I don't know if that just could be him saying like prison. I don't know if that's what the Psukim says.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Yeah, I feel like though if it did use the word bor, then Rashbam would say it. Yeah. Okay, so that's that. Rav Yosef Bechor Shor says an interesting one. Okay, Vadai al oso ha'avon ba'alanu hatzar. Okay, so now there's questions like how do they know it was for that avon? So he says certainly on that sin this tsar came to us. Shekeshem shekulanu pashanu yachad, just as we all sinned together. Kacha piraun ba lekulanu yachad. So too the punishment. Or the retribution came to all of us together. If it was another iniquity, we wouldn't have all suffered an equal punishment. Our sins are not equal. This must be the sin, which we all did equally.
That is convenient, but also like, how do you know that?
How does who know?
I don't know what that making that.
Yeah, but this was
I know that
right. But here, it's interesting the way he says it, because he's saying here we participated in this avon together and we got punished all together equally. So I don't think he's saying in terms of weight. I think he's saying in terms of like this was the group avon that we did, and this is the group punishment that we got.
What's the way of saying?
it sounds like the Mepharshim is saying that it's because and that's the only other that would be because the other argument wouldn't be punishment.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I don't know. I'm happy with my reading. I'll give you another example of this, and you could just say that's nothing I don't understand. But but Rabbi Akiva's students, it was one group that all was characterized by a certain avon, and they all got punished. So if you were in that group and you and all your chaverim are getting the same punishment, and you know that you're all guilty for this thing, you wouldn't say, "Oh, it's because I, did this private avon." So that's Yosef Bechor Shor. The Radak says, "Hisvadu es avonam v'amru ish alachiv kib avon Yosef ba'alahem zeh." So they confessed their sins, and they said each one to his brother that it was the avon of Yosef that this came to them. Ki sha'al lahem Yosef ma shelo haya shoel me'acherim. Okay, that Yosef. Now this is not talking about Yosef as a kid in the pit. This is Yosef, like the Egyptian guy, asked them questions that he didn't ask others. Shahayubaim liknos hatvua, who came to buy produce. Ein ze ki'im avon gadol shahaya alehem. This is only because there must have been a great sin upon them. V'zeh avon Yosef achihem, and this was the sin of Yosef, their brother. So he's saying it's based on the fact that they received an unusual treatment. Yeah, right. As opposed to when they get
from earlier.
Yeah.
As opposed to him saying, "Oh, yeah."
Right. In other words, it seems like in the Psukim, the thing that made them realize this now is when he summons Binyamin to come, because they got in trouble 3 days earlier. That's what you're saying. Like, why didn't they have this reaction when they got interrogated?
Right.
Yeah. But it sounds like though that would have been bad, but then they only made the connection to the Yosef thing when they realized the Binyamin connection. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then, so again, here we have just as examples, 3 models of, like, it seems like they're unanimous in saying that they recognize that this was from an avon, but the methodology is not clear, right? Is it that the punishment that we receive reflects an element of our hate? Is it that the punishment was meted out in a way that indicates the hate, or is it that something unusually bad happened and that that indicates that there was an unusual hate? Okay, but then the Radak comes in and he gives a different lesson than what he gave earlier about Yosef. He says, Alkin ba elenu hatzarazos lemanu b'sipur hazeh ki kishetabu tzara la'adam roi lo lefashbesh b'masav. So this teaches that when a tzara befalls a person, it is proper for him to analyze his actions, v'livdok ma haya hamase hara sha'asa, and to check and investigate what was the bad thing that he did. V'shiyis charid alav, and he should regret it. V'yisvada lifnei akel, and confess before God. V'yivakash mimenu kapara, and ask for kapara. Now, this is different than what he said by Yosef, right? And it's funny because if you look back now at the Yosef thing, the Radak never said that it was because of a sin that he had, right? So it does seem like he has two, well, I guess the question is like this: why doesn't the Radak apply the reasoning from this week's parashah to the Yosef incident? That was a tzara also; he got thrown in jail, So why doesn't he say like, oh, Yosef? Why doesn't he take the midrashim that Yosef, was to blame for this? Why doesn't he say that Yosef why doesn't he criticize Yosef for not doing tshuva? So that's another thing I kind of want to understand is it sounds like he's laying forth 2 principles here. One is when something harsh befalls you, you should say it's for the good. And then there's another thing, which is when a tzara befalls you, you should do tshuva. And I don't know,
maybe those are one and the same.
And that's kind of what Chaim was saying when you said that for earlier, that's what you should do. And maybe he is saying that, It's just, he could have said it a little bit clearer. Yeah. Now, 2 more mafarshim here. Okay, here Avram ben Aram jumps in and does agree with this. Okay, that they were at fault. I mean, because the psukim say that. Avram ben Aram says v'his vadusam al zeh, their confession about this, the emunasam and their belief, their belief that that which befell them was a punishment for their sin. Mat'ima le'emuna shehi Yerusha lehem me'es Avram alav shalom. It was an inheritance that is in accordance with a belief that is an inheritance from Abraham. Shehu yis'aleh shofet kol haaretz, that God is a judge of all the earth. B'zeh yesh hachana v'charata v'kabalas hadas hadin alehem. And in this there is a hachana and charata and regret and an acceptance of the judgment of the din of the sentence that was pronounced upon them. Okay, so he seems to be consistent with this approach. Okay, then you have 2 more. Okay, and these are our last 2 we're going to look at, and then we'll have to theorize here. So actually, let's stop here for 1 second. Okay, so what is this saying? Let me put it this way. Are we saying that when something bad happens to you, then vadai, this is a punishment from God for a specific sin that you should be able to figure out? Or if we're not saying that, then what are we saying? Let's say when the Radak says you should do tshuva, right, is that just a generic?
I was kind of thinking that.
Yeah, right.
It's not necessarily a catalyst to a specific to tshuva, but it's a catalyst to just inwardly introspect,
yeah.
And then
and retrospect.
And
right, yeah.
And by doing so, you'll end up doing teshuva.
Right.
That'll come out of it, whether it's the specific sin or whether it's just anything that you've done.
Right. So the funny thing about it though is that at least in the Portrayed and the Rashbam's approach, the Rashbam's approach of the Mikeitz thing, right, it does look like they're looking for I guess this is the question, right? Is the tzara that befalls you an impetus for tshuva, or is it a message, right, about the hate?
Right. And I'll say the hardest thing about, I guess, saying the Radak as I was is that the psukim, the brothers say, I guess they don't really say it necessarily in a negative way.
Well, it's interesting, by the way. The thing that there are a lot of mafarshim that go into what they say. Right. So they say 3 things. Okay, Ashemi manachnu al achinu asher ra'inu tsaras nafsho b'hischanano elenu v'lo shamanu. So I think it was the Malbim who said that there were three things here. One is that he is our brother and we treated him in a non-brotherly way. The second one is that he had Sarah and we had achzarius towards that. And then the third thing is he pleaded to us and we didn't respond to his pleas. You know, some of Farshim want to bring from here, by the way, that this is a proof that they did not sell him because he didn't plead with that. Well, the difficulty is the pasuk doesn't actually record the pleas.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, we won't get dragged into that. Yeah. Okay. So regarding this thing though, there's a generic call to tshuva. Look at Rabbeinu Bachia, Bachai, however you want to say this guy.
Is it the same person?
Well, there's the Ibn Pakuda one who wrote Chosavos, and that's not this one. This is a different one. And it seems like no one knows how to pronounce their names. Bachai, Bachia, Baheh, you know, yeah.
Wait, so this one is the
This is the Chumash one.
So that's the
Bachia ben Asher.
The very Kabbalistic one.
Yes, the very Kabbalistic one. Yeah.
Very into Medrash Rabbah.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Okay. Aval shemi manachnu alchinu zer derech tzadikim. This is the way of tzadikim. Kishechotim, when they sin, modim b'davar, they admit it. Umatzdihim alehen es hadin. They are matzik the din on them. Now, how do you translate like tziduk hadin? This phrase we throw around a lot.
Yeah.
Well, people use tziduk hadin for usually in the case of when a tragedy happens. You know.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, maybe it's just okay. Fine. All right. So then we'll figure it out now.
Seduced hadin.
Yeah. What does it mean to be mastik the din?
To be just in the judgment.
Not only that,
Yeah, to see the justice in the din or to justify the din. Okay. Yeah, to justify the din. I think it's probably the most literal translation here. Okay. In Shikazav, as it's written, Asham hu Asham Lashem in Vayikra. I don't know what drasha he's referring to in that. I assume it's a drasha. V'derech harishayim shechotim v'omrim inenu chet. So the Rishayim are the opposite. They sin and they say it was not a sin. Hu shikazav asher konehen yehargun v'lo yeshamu. Okay, brings a pasuk from Zechariah. Al kain ba elenu. Okay, so is this relevant or did I just copy this by mistake? Let me read this. Yeah, Pirusho. Al hanachon ba elenu. Oh, meaning al kain. It doesn't mean therefore. It means it was justified that this came upon us. The al hadin, and it was in line with justice. Miloshin kain benos slavcha dovros. So that does not mean thus the benos slavcha spoke. It means that they spoke correctly, like it was right. V'hinei hitzdiku aleim es hadin. They justified the din upon themselves. Ki kasher lo chamlu alav. Just that because they didn't have compassion on Yosef when they saw his anguish, then the star came upon them, right? You were not showing compassion on your brother, God's not going to show compassion on you.
I can almost see him going both ways with like how this is working.
Yeah.
On the one hand, he's saying on the other hand, he's saying they create the parallel.
Yeah.
Which means if you make it like, oh, this is why I'm getting it, then it's X. But if you just say that, meaning according to him, it seems like I could just say it has to do with any claim I do.
Yeah, right. It sounds like as long as you're matstik the din,
Right.
yeah.
Clarify.
Yeah.
Both possibilities are talking about in that it isn't interesting for Shua.
Correct.
But what it is also a message about
Correct. That's good to be. Yeah. Both approaches are saying it's impetus tshuva, but can you use the Sarah as a method for diagnosing the chait? Right. As a diagnostic, you know? Yeah. And then what's the method of diagnosis?
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So one more of the Mefarshim, and then I want to go into the Rav. Okay.
Right.
So background info here for the Ralbag. Again, the style of the Ralbag, you listen to the Sunday Shir, okay, but at the end of each parsha, he gives toalos, which are lessons.
Right.
And the toalos are in three categories: mitzvos, midos, and deos. By mitzvos, he means halacha. Midos, he means ethics or like interpersonal conduct. And then deos, he means philosophical or metaphysical ideas. Okay, so note he is going to bring two toalos from this pasuk. Okay, Hatoelas hatshi'ihu b'deos. The first one is in metaphysics. V'hu lahodia, and this is to teach us, she'Hashem yis'ala ya'anosh hatovim alma shi'asuhu mi'apulus hamagunos, yeah? Yeah, Deos is ideas. It's metaphysics, it's science, it's philosophy. Yeah, not Deos like Ralbag Deos. It's confusing. Yeah, it's confusing. Yeah. Always have to get the terminology clear. So this is to teach us that Hashem punishes those who are good for the despicable actions that they do. So for this reason, the Bnei Yaakov ascribed the bad occurrence that happened to them to their evil actions with regards to Yosef. Okay, so that's a philosophical thing. You see from here, when they suffered bad, they ascribed it to God. Okay, but then the next lesson, Hatolas Ha'asirihu b'midos. The 10th lesson is in midos. Vihu, namely, Shiroi Lashalim, it is befitting of a perfected person, Shayatstik alav es hadin, bevo alav hara'a, that a perfected person should justify the din when a bad thing befalls him. V'yafashfish b'masav, and he should investigate his actions. V'yaches osa laroa masav, and he should ascribe it to the badness of his actions. V'lo yisraim al Hashem yis'aleh b'havio alav ma sheyavi min hara, and he should not complain against Hashem when Hashem brings upon him this ra. Ulezeh timsa sheyachsu b'nei Yaakov ma shepagsha mehara laroa ma'aseh b'inyan Yosef. And for this reason, then the Bnei Yaakov ascribed the ra that they suffered to their own to Hashem because of their bad actions. So isn't this a little weird? He brings this down as a metaphysical truth that God punishes those who are bad. And he says, and that's why they ascribed it to God. But then he also says that for midos, you should justify the din and be mafashfish in your actions and do tshuva, I mean, isn't it weird he divides this into two different toalos? It should be one toalos. Yeah. And it's like he even ends in the same way. And that's why they ascribed it to the evil of their actions. And herein lies, I think, the answer. Yeah. Yeah.
And the second clause,
Wait, Lodium, Janosh Hatovim al Hulodia Shem Yisrael Janosh Hatovim al Mashi Yasu Mehulus Mugunos. Ulezetim Sarshakvar Yachazu Bnei Yaakov Mashakar Lem Mehara Leroa Masem B'inyan Yosef. So no mention of tshuva there, right? That's just saying that God punishes those who are evil for their evil actions, and that's why they ascribed it to Yosef. And then he says the second one is it's proper for the perfected person. It's also funny he says for the perfected person. Right? It's funny he throws that in. Isn't it right for everyone?
Well, no.
Okay, maybe I get it right. Anyway, so it's right for the perfected person to justify the din when something comes upon him and investigate his actions and ascribe it and attribute it to his evil actions. L'roa masav, his evil actions in general, it sounds like. So to me, it sounds like he's saying that you can't necessarily know what the specific fate is, but you should use it. He seems to be.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That God is punishing you based on particular actions.
Okay. Right.
But in terms of how you respond to that, you can't look at those
okay, good.
As a method about the
yeah. Okay, good. Good.
That's why it's kind of
right. Okay, good. So in other words, the first one is stating a reality. There are specific chataim that God is punishing you for, but when it comes to the practicality of the tshuva, you just have to do a general tshuva and investigate your actions, and you can't try to figure out like the why God is doing this. Yeah. Okay. Okay, good.
The person telling us what's happening and telling us how we like interact with it.
Okay, good. All right. So this is a perfect segue into the Rav. Okay. Now, so have you ever heard of the Rav's, I don't know if you call it a book or a treatise of Kol Dodi Dofeik?
No.
Yes. Okay. So it is, do you know what it's about?
Not really.
Okay. So I knew it was about Israel. Okay. And like the Jewish people's relationship to Israel. Okay. I'm going to do a little commercial break here. Okay. So I found out that one of my Facebook friends was the translator for an edition of it. So I just like Googled it. $4. So I bought it. I was like, this is a good thing to read during Hanukkah. I started reading it on Monday and I finished it. Oh, I'm 2 pages away from the end today. Very short book. It's like 70 pages ish. 95 pages. Okay, fine. Yeah. So I think the last 25 pages are footnotes. I think okay, right. So I am going to advocate buying this, if only for the first 11 pages, which we're going to read now. Okay, and I'll tell you why. I read this because the Rav wrote it apparently. I don't know. I think it was in 1959.
Like he wrote it?
The Rav wrote it in Hebrew, and then Lawrence Kaplan translated it into English. And he, I got to go on record saying this. He says that the publishers changed the title to Fate and Destiny, as opposed to Kol Dodi Dofeik, which means the sound of my beloved knocking. Yeah. He said he didn't like, the translator said he didn't like the fact that they changed the title. You'll see why when we read this excerpt. But so I think the Rav wrote it because it was after the Holocaust, and he wrote it kind of as a tochacha to American Jews for the way that the lack of response to the Holocaust, and then not taking. Do you know the reference of Kol Dodi Dofeik, like what that is referring to? Yeah.
Oh, it's like that. There's the two lovers are sitting back and forth. And finally, he comes and she's I'm in bed. I have my pajamas on. I don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
And he knocks. Then he leaves, and she goes to the door, and she sees that he's gone, and that's where everything goes down.
Exactly. So the Rav wanted to say that the Holocaust and the state of Israel is God knocking, and like we are almost in the position where we're missing the opportunity to to take advantage of that, and so it's a strong tochacha, and you need someone like the Rav to do this, But so I'm reading this expecting it to be about that. The first 11 pages are about how to deal with suffering and evil in the world. Okay, and if you don't mind, I would like to read all the pages, all 11 pages, and we'll discuss as we read it. Sure. Okay, because I know I was going to go through and just like cherry pick like the relevant things, but trust me, hearing the Rav say it is pretty good. Okay.
Well, you can.
Yeah. Okay. So again, and we can go ahead and now not all of this is going to be relevant because there's a lot of like poetic Rav stuff they throws and other stuff, but we'll stop and talk about what's relevant, or if there's stuff we want to discuss, then we can do it. Okay. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Translated into understandable layman English or the Rav English?
I think the Rav's English. So okay, here's what I can't figure out. I think this is the same translator who translated Halachic Man.
Oh.
Okay, but it's funny. I gotta it's interesting. He didn't include his name in the entire publication here, which is like it took me a while to verify that this is actually him. But I gotta check out Halachic Man later. Okay, anyway, so one of the darkest enigmas, he always starts off in rough language, enigma. One of the darkest enigmas with which Judaism has struggled from the very dawn of its existence is the problem of suffering in the world. Already Moses, the master of the prophets, in a moment of mercy and grace of divine acceptance, pleaded with the Lord that he enlighten him concerning this obscure matter. Moses knocked at the gates of heaven and cried out, "Show me now thy ways that I may know thee, to the end that I may find grace in thy sight. Show me, I pray thee, thy glory." Right, and that's the Chazal saying that he was asking about Tzadik V'Ralo and Rasha V'Tovlo. Why and wherefore do afflictions and pain befall man? Why and wherefore do the righteous suffer and the wicked prosper? By the way, I don't know where Chazal get that from, that's what Moshe was asking about, because he was asking about the Chet HaEkel. Right, okay. From that wondrous morn, when Moses, the faithful shepherd, communed with the creator of the world and sought a comprehensive solution to the question of questions, prophets and sages throughout all the generations have continued to grapple with it. Habakkuk demanded satisfaction for the affront to justice. Jeremiah, King David in his Psalms, and Koheles pondered this quandary. The entire book of Job is devoted to this ancient and mysterious query, which still agitates and disturbs our world and demands an answer. Why has God allowed evil to reign over his creation? Okay. Judaism, in its strenuous endeavor to reach a safe shore in a world torn asunder by pain and affliction, in its search for an answer to the profound dilemma posed by the evil, which apparently reigns unboundedly, arrived at a new formulation and definition of the problem, possessed of both depth and breadth. The problem of suffering, Judaism claims, may be raised in two distinct dimensions, fate and destiny. Okay, that's the title of the book. Okay, fate and destiny. Judaism has always distinguished between an existence of fate and an existence of destiny, between the I subject to fate and the I endowed with destiny. It is in this distinction that our teaching regarding suffering is to be found. Now, he's going to go and explain both of these things together. Yeah, he's going to explain. Yeah, okay, here he goes.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, he's going to explain. He's going to explain. Okay. He's going to explain them together, and you'll see why it's the same. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. What is the nature of an existence of fate? It is an existence of compulsion, an existence of the type described by the Mishnah, against your will do you live out your life. A purely factual existence, one link in a mechanical chain, devoid of meaning, direction, purpose, but subject to the forces of the environment into which the individual has been cast by providence without any prior consultation. The eye of fate has the image of an object. An object he appears as made and not as maker. He is fashioned by his passive encounter with an objective external environment as one object vis-a-vis another object. The eye of fate is caught up in a blind, wholly external dynamic. His being is empty, lacking any inwardness, any independence, any selfhood. Indeed, an eye of fate is a contradiction in terms. For how can eye awareness and selfhood coexist with pure externality and object-like being? It is against this background that the experience of evil arises in all its terror. There are two stages to this fate-laden experience of evil. Now, spoiler alert, the Rav is critical of this. Okay, he's saying this is not the good approach. All right. To begin with, man, the object, bound in the chains of an existence of compulsion, stands perplexed and confused before that great mystery, suffering. Fate mocks him. His being, shattered and torn, contradicts itself and negates its own value and worth. The dread of annihilation seizes hold of him and crushes him, both body and soul. The sufferer, quaking and panic-stricken, wanders in the empty spaces of a world upon which the wrath and terror of God weigh heavily. His afflictions appear shadowy and murky, like satanic forces. There's your satanic reference there. The offspring of the chaos and the void which pollute the cosmos that had been destined to clearly reflect the image of its creator. In this stage of perplexity and speechlessness, of confusion of both mind and heart, the sufferer does not pose any questions about the cause and nature of evil. He suffers in silence, groaning under the weight of an agony that has stifled all complaint and suppressed all queries and inquiries. So in a word, stage one is you suffer and it's harsh and you're just kind of overwhelmed by the suffering. Okay. After the psychic upheaval of the sufferer, as immediate reaction to evil has passed, there follows the intellectual curiosity which endeavors to understand the cosmos and thereby undergird man's confidence and security. What do you call, what's the word for the study of divine justice? Is that theodicy?
I don't know.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. So listen as we read this, how critical the Rav is of theodicy. Okay. I always have to correct, not the Iliad. Sorry, not the companion to the Iliad, but the theodicy. Yeah. In this stage, a person begins to contemplate suffering and to pose grave and difficult questions. He tracks the intellectual foundations of suffering and evil and seeks to find the harmony and balance between the affirmation and the negation and to blunt the sharp edge of the tension between the thesis, the good, and the antithesis, the bad in existence. As a result of the question and answer, problem and resolution, he formulates a metaphysics of evil wherewith he is able to reach an accommodation with evil, indeed to cover it up. The sufferer utilizes his capacity for an intellectual abstraction with which he was endowed by his creator to the point of self-deception, the denial of the existence of evil in the world. So he's basically saying you come up with you have evil, then you come up with a metaphysics whereby there is no evil.
Ooh, interesting. I've done that.
Yeah, I've done that too. Okay. And I find myself, just as a side note here, I'm torn between these two approaches because I don't know, like I've taught EO for a while and I've come to my understanding of this. However, my whole orientation towards Mishle and Stoicism is going to be what he's going to say next. So I'm kind of torn. Okay. Interesting thing. Okay. Judaism, with its realistic approach to man and his place in the world, understood that evil cannot be blurred or camouflaged, and that any attempt to downplay the extent of the contradiction and fragmentation to be found in reality will neither endow man with tranquility nor enable him to grasp the existential mystery. In other words, it doesn't work. You can't explain away evil.
Evil exists.
Evil exists, and you can't explain it away. Yeah. Evil is an undeniable fact. There is evil. There's suffering. There are hellish torments in this world. Whoever wishes to delude himself by diverting his attention from the deep fissure in reality by romanticizing human existence is naught but a fool and a fantast. I've never seen that word before, a fantast, right? One who fantasizes. Yeah. It is impossible to overcome the hideousness of evil through philosophical speculative thought. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that a little bit.
Yeah.
What is the thing that
So I'll tell you an example of this. Okay, and this is like Bekitzer, a huge part of the Rambam's answer in Eov. Okay, is Rambam says if you look at all the Ra in the world, there are only three types of Ra. Okay, there is the Ra that comes from the nature of physicality itself, right? So wood rots, people age, sicknesses occur, right?
What's it called? It's like a law in like
Entropy.
Yeah,
Entropy, right? That is
offensively.
exactly right. Entropy is a physical thing, and he says if you want to be physical and not be subject to entropy, then you're living a contradiction, right? Okay. So he says, and if you look at the physical world, like those raos are very minute compared to the things that are not ra. For example, you will always have fewer people who have a sickness than people who are healthy. Things function well more than they function poorly, and in nature, like there are more non-earthquake destruction times than like earthquake destruction, So as a whole, nature is good.
Maybe as a whole status, it happens.
Yeah.
That hasn't even time more in. When has that?
Because he says that if you understand all of it, you'll understand that it's all necessary for the maintenance of the system.
Ooh, have you read Mistborn trilogy?
No.
Okay, fine, never mind.
Yeah. And I mean, again, this is the whole, all the Prakam and Rama about Eov, but I'm just giving you an example to address your point. Second type of Ra is the Ra that people cause to each other, okay, because God gave us free will, right? And the third type of Ra, and he says, and that's more numerous, and the third type of Ra is the Ra we cause ourselves through our own bad decisions. Now, if you look at those things, the Rama is not denying evil, but what he's saying is, look, like you're in a physical world, and this type of Ra, the first type, is part of physicality. You can't have physicality without it. Second type of Ra is because God created human beings with free will, and so is the third type. So what are you complaining about? Again, that's not the whole answer, but it's basically trying to say that like God, and he by the way, and this is after the parak, or sorry, this is after the parak where he says God doesn't do Ra at all.
Right.
Evil
and darkness, right? God didn't create.
Right. These are all things that come about incidentally, So if you go through the whole Rambam there, which is very important to go through in your life. Yeah, it's very, very good. If you want a walkthrough of it, read the essay called Divine Providence, Hopes and Fears. Hold on just one second.
For Yoshia?
No. No, I've taught 2 many years in a row. I need a break.
So I'll come back one time.
Yeah. I need to wait till I can approach fresh. Yeah, this essay is I was just telling someone about this recently. Who was I telling about this? So this is Divine Providence, Goals, Hopes, and Fears by David Gutman. I don't know if I'm.
Only 36 pages.
Yeah. Okay. I'm saying this without exaggeration. Of things written by people nowadays, this feels like it's written with Ruach HaKodesh. Okay, I know that's huge, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. What he does is he basically goes through and walks you through the Rambam Shita on Hashgacha Pratis, and every time I've read it, it is like I'm reading a new essay and I get further and further clarity. And it's like a guide to the guide in that sense. It is masterfully written. And it sounds like all he's doing is basically just like excerpting Rambams and like giving you little bits of explanation. It's fantastic. Maybe we should go through this on a Thursday, as a Thursday night here. I haven't been to this in a while, and that can satisfy your Eov desire. Not this Thursday night, but
I'm not having meetings.
yeah, I'm saying not this Thursday night, but okay, let's plan on doing that. Okay, that's all right. That sounds good. Anyway, but that's an example of what the Rav is talking about, is that you end up reading the Rambam and you're like, okay, fine, like I'm totally reconciled with evil, and like it makes sense that this evil's in the world and God's not doing it, and so the Rav seems to be against all that. Okay,
He's against all.
yeah, he's saying that you can't explain away evil, and it's an undeniable fact. And if you're trying to overcome the hideousness of evil through philosophical speculative thought, then you're just a fool and a fantast.
Well, that seems to be like, if you're trying, that seems to be what the Rambam says with the first category of evil. First category of evil is that evil exists and that it's part of human.
Right. So I guess you could say that the Rav is not necessarily saying that about the Rambam, but I will tell you that like the emotional place that I end up after reading the Rambam is like what the Rav is criticizing. We're like, what do you mean? Like, of course there has to be like, this, and I also sometimes question whether I'm faking myself out. Yeah. Okay. Therefore, Judaism determined that man, entrapped in the depths of a frozen, fate-laden existence, will seek in vain for the solution to the problem of evil within the framework of speculative thought, for he will never find it. Certainly, the testimony of the Torah that the cosmos is very good is true. However, this affirmation may be made only from the infinite perspective of the Creator. Finite man, with his partial vision, cannot uncover the absolute good in the cosmos. The contradiction in existence stands out clearly and cannot be negated. Evil, which can neither be explained nor comprehended, does exist. Only if man could grasp the world as a whole would he be able to gain a perspective on the essential nature of evil. However, as long as man's apprehension is limited and distorted, as long as he perceives only isolated fragments of the cosmic drama and the mighty epic of history, he remains unable to penetrate into the secret layer of suffering and evil. Yeah.
Is he in a roundabout way positing that if you were able to, then you wouldn't see it as evil?
Correct.
Okay.
I think so. He is saying, and I think that's what he's saying, that if you saw the whole thing, like Moshe.
I thought that's what we were saying was a negative thing. Was a negative viewpoint.
No, it's negative if you try to do it. But he's saying that man left to his own devices can never succeed in that. Can never succeed in getting a philosophical, speculative.
I agree.
Yeah, right.
So he's saying this is a positive thing to do, to recognize that if you did know it all, you know that it wasn't evil?
It's positive to recognize that, right? But he's saying that you can't actually be in that perspective.
Sure.
And insofar as you try to think that you're in the perspective, you're faking yourself out on some level.
When is he apprehending full?
He hasn't done that yet. He hasn't advocated for it. He's going to do that in a second. Okay. Yeah.
Meaning you should view the world as if evil does exist and yet know that it doesn't.
No, he's saying you should treat evil as though it does exist, because you're never going to see things from God's perspective. Okay, but what does he say you should do with the evil? That he's going to say next. Okay, hold on. Let's finish this paragraph. Okay. To what may the matter be compared? And by the way, I've always wanted to find a source for this mashal.
I've heard this mashal so many times.
Me too, but whoever came up with it, I can now say the Rav says it. Okay, to a person gazing at a beautiful rug, a true work of art, onto which an exquisite design has been woven, but looking at it from its reverse side, right? So I think we did this last time, right? Back of a tapestry, right? On Google Images, if you haven't seen the back of a tapestry, right? So it's all ugly, right? I think we did until him, yeah, right? So it's, I think I clicked on it and we also saw the Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum. Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, all right, so, right, back of a tapestry is all chaotic, etc. And the Rav says, can such a viewing give rise to a sublime aesthetic experience like Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park? We at last view the world from its reverse side. We are therefore unable to grasp the all-encompassing framework of being. And it is only within that framework that it is possible to discern the divine plan, the essential nature of the divine actions. Okay. Yeah. And now he summarizes, in a word, the eye of fate asks a theoretical metaphysical question regarding evil, and this question has no answer. It is insoluble. Okay. So now, what can we do with evil? That's what he's going to say now. In the second dimension of human existence, destiny, the problem of suffering assumes a new form. What is the nature of the existence of destiny? Now, by the way, destiny, he does not mean like a predetermined fate, like people use destiny, okay? It is an active mode of existence, one wherein man confronts the environment into which he was thrown, possessed of an understanding of his uniqueness, of his special worth, of his freedom, and of his ability to struggle with his external circumstance without forfeiting either his independence or his selfhood. The motto of the eye of destiny is, against your will you are born, and against your will you die, but you live of your own free will. Man is born like an object, dies like an object, but possesses the ability to live like a subject, like a creator, an innovator who can impress his own individual seal upon his life and can extricate himself from a mechanical type of existence and enter into a creative, active mode of being. Man's task in the world, according to Judaism, is to transform fate into destiny, a passive existence into an active existence, an existence of compulsion, perplexity, and muteness into an existence replete with a powerful will, with resourcefulness, daring, and imagination. God's blessing to the work of his hands sums up their entire purpose in life. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. Subdue the environment and subject it to your control. If you do not rule over it, it will subjugate you. Destiny bestows upon man a new rank in God's world. It presents him with a royal crown, and man becomes transformed into a partner with the Almighty in the act of creation. Pause for Naomi's question. Yeah, Naomi? Unless you hit that by mistake. I think you hit. Okay, there we go. All right, fine. Yeah, all right. So he hasn't explained evil yet. He's just saying that man was created to be active and to take charge of his destiny. Okay, but now he says like this. As we have stated above, man's existence of destiny gives rise to an original approach to the problem of evil. For so long as a person grapples with the problem of evil while still living an existence of fate, his relationship to this problem expresses itself only in a theoretical philosophical approach. As a passive creature, the man of fate lacks the strength to struggle with evil in order to contain it or in order to utilize it to achieve an exalted goal. Starting to become clear? Yeah. For the I subject to fate is unable to effect any matter of consequence in the sphere of his own existence. He is nourished by his external environment, and his life bears the imprint of that environment. Therefore, he relates to evil from a non-practical standpoint and philosophizes about it from a purely speculative perspective. He wishes to deny the existence of evil and to create a harmonistic worldview. The end of such an effort can only be complete and total disillusionment. Evil derides the captive of fate and his fantasy about a world which is wholly good and wholly beautiful. However, in the realm of destiny, man recognizes the world as it is and does not wish to use harmonistic formulas in order to gloss over and conceal evil. The man of destiny is highly realistic and does not flinch from confronting evil face to face. His approach is an ethico-halachic one, halachic, devoid of the slightest speculative metaphysical coloration. When the man of destiny suffers, he says to himself, evil exists and I will neither deny it nor camouflage it with vain intellectual gymnastics. I am concerned about evil from a halachic standpoint, like a person who wishes to know the deed which he shall do. I ask one simple question: what must the sufferer do so that he may live through his suffering? In this dimension, the center of gravity shifts from the causal and teleological aspect of evil, the only difference between causality and teleology being a directional one, to its practical aspect. Again, just plain English, teleology means the study of purpose, what the purpose of a thing is, okay? So he's saying, in other words, what caused this to come about, or what is this trying to accomplish? He's saying we're not concerned with that at all, okay? The problem, or the man of destiny, is not concerned with that. The problem is now formulated in straightforward halachic language and revolves about one's daily quotidian tasks. The fundamental question is, what obligation does suffering impose upon man? The question is greatly beloved by Judaism, and she has placed it at the very center of her world of thought. The halacha is concerned with this problem as it is concerned with other problems of permitted and forbidden, liability and exemption. We do not inquire about the hidden ways of the Almighty, but rather about the path wherein man shall walk when suffering strikes. We ask neither about the cause of evil nor about its purpose, but rather about how it might be mended and elevated. How shall a person act in a time of trouble? What ought a man to do so that he not perish in his afflictions? The halachic answer to this question is very simple. Afflictions come to elevate a person, to purify and sanctify his spirit, to cleanse and purge it of the dross of superficiality and vulgarity, to refine his soul and to broaden his horizons. In a word, the function of suffering is to mend that which is flawed in an individual's personality.
It sounds like a positive thing.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is. Yes, this is the positive thing.
I guess I'm grappling with the difference between this and the fate man.
Okay, let's finish this description and then we'll summarize and talk about it. The halacha teaches that the sufferer commits a grave sin if he allows his trouble to go to waste and remain without meaning or purpose. Suffering occurs in the world in order to contribute something to man, in order that atonement be made for him, in order to redeem him from corruption, vulgarity, and depravity. From out of its midst, the sufferer must arise ennobled and refined, clean and pure. It is a time of agony unto Jacob, but out of it he shall be saved. I.e., from out of the very midst of the agony itself, he will attain eternal salvation. Yes, exactly. A phoenix raising itself from the ashes. Yeah, the agony itself will serve to form and shape his character so that he will thereby reach a level of exaltedness not possible in a world bereft of suffering. Out of the negation grows the affirmation. Out of the antithesis, the thesis blossoms forth. And out of the abrogation of reality, there emerges a new reality. The Torah, no one can write like the Rav. The Torah itself bears witness to man's powerful spiritual reaction to any trouble that may befall him when it states, in your distress, when all these things come upon you, ... and you shall return unto the Lord your God. Suffering imposes upon man the obligation to return to God in complete and wholehearted acceptance. Afflictions are designed to bestir us to repent. And what is repentance if not man's self-renewal and his supernal redemption? One more paragraph here. and then we'll stop. Woe unto the man whose suffering has not precipitated a spiritual crisis in the depths of his being, whose soul remains frozen and lacking forgiveness. Woe unto the sufferer if his heart is not inflamed by the fires of affliction, if his pangs do not kindle the lamp of the Lord that is within him. If a person allows his pains to wander about the vast empty spaces of the cosmos like blind, purposeless forces, then a grave indictment is drawn up against him for having frittered away his suffering. Okay, so in summary, okay, the man of fate, he's the way the Rav depicts him, is in a world where stuff happens to him. Are you smiling because of the preview voice?
Yeah.
I was thinking in a world, right, where man is subject to external fate, and he basically tries to use his mind to philosophize a harmonious worldview where like evil has its place, and evil is really serving the purposes of good and stuff. So then he's number one going to be trying to do something which the Rav says is impossible, because it's going to involve some denial of the evil, you know. Okay, and I'm just going to contrast it, and you can ask your questions. And he's going to be passing up tremendous opportunities for growth. But the man of destiny, who takes an active role, will not try to understand the cause of evil or the purpose of evil at all. He'll say, what can I do with this evil, right? In terms of my own transcendence and enlightenment and tshuva. And I heard this idea of the Rav expressed. I don't know if the Rav expressed it this way. I heard this quoted from Rabbi Zucker. I don't know what he was quoting, but that the Rav differentiated between the word madua and lama. We might talk about this in Tehillim also, that when evil happens, we don't say madua, we don't say why, we say lama, which we translate as why, but lama means lema, for what, meaning we don't know the cause of why this is happening, but we can say, what can this be used for, and use it to perfect ourselves and to do tshuva and to get kapara and all this other stuff. So that's what the man of destiny does, where he takes active control, says, okay, I have this suffering, I'm not going to deny it, I'm even going to lean into it in order to figure out how can I use this to perfect myself or to do tshuva, or use this as an opportunity for growth or for chesed or whatever. Yes, it is. Yeah. Against who though?
I mean, against anyone who is survived and suffering.
Yeah. Meaning it's easier said than done, type of harif, or
yeah.
Yeah.
It seems very like you're not moving in a very short way. Like,
yes, but see, this is what I meant when I said that, like, this appeals to the Stoic Jew in me, because this is all of Stoicism, you know, of taking what happens to you and then using it, you know, the obstacle is the way, and you know, be fire, and fire takes everything that it encounters and uses as a fuel for its own like existence, you know, and
I'm laughing, you know.
yeah, right. So I have an episode about that, about the difference between be water, my friend, and be fire, my friend. You know, one's Bruce Lee, the other one's Marcus Aurelius, and what are the differences? But you know, it is harif, and it's a high bar, right?
Also, it's like, it seems like a high bar, but at the same time, like, that is the whole point.
Yeah, it is.
If
Yeah.
you're not there, then you're like missing the whole essence.
Exactly. Yeah. You're frittering away your suffering. And what was the other term you used? That was really good there. You're and just wandering around the vast empty spaces of the cosmos like blind, purposeless forces. You know.
It's really hard. Like, it's a high bar, but if you're not there, then you're like you're not doing it.
Yeah. Then you're an object. You're an object.
That's
Yeah.
like Yisrael's idea in free will in general, though. I mean, like it seems like it's almost not quite word for word, but it's the same idea. Is that like where we all kind of start off as objects, and we eventually try to make ourselves gods.
Right.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
He's going from Chefset to Gavra. That's like the whole
Yeah. That's exactly what he says, right? Yeah. That is good. Yeah.
Well, one of my questions on it is on page 8 in the top thingy, right? He says, we do not require about the hidden ways of the Almighty, but rather about the path wherein man shall walk when suffering strikes.
Yeah.
Right? We ask neither about the cause of evil nor about its purpose, rather how it might be amended and elevated. And then in the next paragraph, he says afflictions come. He almost says what they do, even though he says that we don't ask
Right.
the purpose.
Then he gives. So I think he means, though, in a prescriptive way, not a descriptive way, meaning that we should relate to afflictions as we should use afflictions to elevate ourselves and to purify and sanctify the spirit. I don't think he's giving a theological.
Okay. Meaning he's saying that this is not necessarily why they're here.
Right. For all intents and purposes, this is what we should do with them. This is why they're here for our perspective.
So we're worried to see them as a Ralbag.
Yeah. Okay, good. So now this is why I think
Okay.
that this perfectly explains the Ralbag,
Yeah.
right? So the Ralbag is saying, so the ninth Toelis about Deus
Yeah.
is the teleological metaphysical one, which is,
Yeah.
we know from Judaism, afflictions are there as punishment, but we can't access God's like cheshbon and God's mind and stuff. So in the realm of like trying to understand what this is a punishment for, we can't really do that.
Right.
But in the realm of midos, in the 10th Toelis, when suffering happens, when affliction happens to you, the perfected person should try to be matzik the din, try to understand wherein lies the justice and the, like, in what sense do I deserve this? And in what sense can I be mafashmish my actions and do tshuva? And that is an ethical imperative. That's why he puts it as a toelis in midos, And I think that is why the Mefarshim who blame Yosef for this thing, I don't think when Rashi says that he was, what do you call, making himself up, I don't think Rashi knows that for a fact. I think that the point of that midrash that Rashi's quoting is to say that, like, this is the derech that what you're supposed to do is, if you're Yosef and you get thrown to prison, it might be entirely her fault, right? But you should ask yourself, like, am I doing anything that would make me deserving of this? Like, have I been too into my looks and like letting this position of authority go into my head? Is this why God is doing this to me? I have no idea, but you should generally like look at these things. And I think that you can even explain this with the Mida Connect and Mida stuff, the people who do this with a particular thing, like, oh, we threw Yosef into a bore. I don't think, I'd be hard pressed to say that like they're making these statements as definitive things, like you're knowing God's mind, like why God did this. But the point is that you're using the framing device of Mida Connect and Mida to strengthen the reality of Skarv Onesh and the reality of like you need to do tshuva, in your mind, and it's like it's a method of getting yourself to do tshuva, which is the real point of this. It's not a metaphysical diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, so like Norm was saying, it's the way of taking something which we can't interact with and interacting with it in a way that we know is not its actual form.
Yeah, and we know that there is an actual justice,
Right.
and everything is in line, Kol Dodi Dofeik mishpat,
Right.
but we can't see into God's mind. And but we can see in our own mind, and we can look in our own actions, and then use that for tshuva. And I don't think this is a new idea. And I think we've all heard various forms of this idea. But I do think that for me, seeing it play out in the events in the Chumash does give it it makes it strengthens it to see it in an example. And that when Yosef's brothers were saying like, oh, like, Hashem Menachnu, and like, this is why God is doing this to us, I think it puts it in a much more realistic framework than them. Like, I used to think that they were like saying, oh, this is part of the divine plan. Like, I don't think that's what they're doing. I think like they're doing what the Rav and what the Radak and the Ralbag are saying to do. And because we see it in the Chumash narrative, and because we know about Yosef's dreams, and we know how it turns out, then we do see how it fits into God's plan. But that's not what they were doing,
No, yeah, I was thinking about that also. Like, there's a couple factors that kind of like don't sit well with that. Is that one, obviously they didn't know the conclusion, they didn't know anything about like who Yosef was or whatever at the time. But two is that, like, granted, it would only take one of them to remember, but like someone would have to remember and like be like, oh, it's because we didn't listen to him when we were throwing him in the pit, whatever, 20 years ago or whatever it was,
I don't think it's that hard for them to remember it. I mean,
it also seems like they did some halacha immediately.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah. Right. And they certainly had conflicts that had to do with their father, and they know that their father has been mourning this whole time. So yeah. And I do think, by the way, that your initial intuition about the Radak on Yosef, about that this is for Latova.
Yeah.
I think, again, just my knowledge of the Radak, he's not saying this in a like, this is coming for my benefit way. I think it is like in the Rav's way of like, you should, make this into something that is good. It's still, the lashon makes me uncomfortable though, because he does seem to be saying it in a descriptive way.
Right.
But I think the fact that the Radak by Yosef's brothers says they should do tshuva and stuff like that, that seems to be the essential idea.
So
Yeah.
I put all what we're saying into the example that the Rav gives with the rug, and then I kind of came out with what Chaim said at the end of it. And basically, when you think about it, so it's recognizing that there's a tapestry,
Right.
It's recognizing that there's a back of a tapestry. It's recognizing that what we can interact with is the back of the tapestry. But the daunting part is what Chaim was saying, which is trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense, basically.
And that's not daunting according to the Rav, that's impossible. Right.
No, meaning because we're supposed to interact with the back of the rug, like the Rav was saying, right?
Right.
But the back of the rug doesn't really. It is chaotic though. That's, I guess, the problem. That like.
Yeah.
It is a chaotic thing.
Right, but I think the analogy breaks down there because the actual tapestry weaver is looking at the front of the rug in order to make the back of the rug. And we're not saying that you have to be seeing stuff from God's perspective in order to engage in the tshuva from our back of the rug perspective.
Right. But that's
not his own.
But I think that's the difficult part there, is that we can't really even make sense of the back of the rug either in a sensible way. We have to just kind of like we were kind of saying by the Ralbag, is we have to make the teshuvah that we're doing where you have to make that which this is coming. Okay, I can't put it in that into words. We have to take the bad things happening to us and then create the teshuvah on our own.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of meaning we're not actually like connecting the back of the rug in a way that all makes sense.
Correct.
We're recognizing that it's chaotic. We're
Right.
recognizing that we can't actually pinpoint one to another.
Right.
And I think that's like we said with the Ralbag, is that we kind of make the teshuvah our own.
Right. And there is a certain trust in the process,
Yeah.
which is that if you do tshuva, then that is latov,
Yeah.
and the front of the tapestry will turn out good,
Yeah.
even if you don't know what it is you're designing. Yeah.
I want to clarify what I think is like pretty like daunting or shocking.
Sure.
For me. Like I hear that was like internalized and wrong that happens about imperfection
Yeah.
and trying to control on sorry, it's not a new idea. What is new to me is contrasting when you're not doing that. It's like when you're not. Like missing the whole ball.
Yeah, you're missing what it is to be a human, according to what he's saying. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good clarification. Right.
That idea from Torah, I had a new idea.
Right.
And not doing that,
yeah,
like you're not a human. It's like
yeah. I mean, if you think about it, right. Literally, it is. If you don't do what the Rav is describing, then you suffering a tzara is no different than an animal suffering a tzara.
Right.
It's just stimulus response and pain, and then that doesn't go anywhere. You know. That is a big idea. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And if we're going to take the Ralbag at his word, it's Roy for the Shalim to do this. Yeah. I think people can do this, but like you need to be on a certain level to even be able to engage in this process. You know. Yeah.
You listen to the TTL share. He's even more hurried.
Which shir are you referring to? Do you know?
I can find it in like the TTL chat.
Yeah.
I remember last year we did like the shir on free will, and I remember it being very hurried.
Okay, because I haven't listened to free will shir in a long time.
Like Rabbi Shaul literally said, like, if you're not doing this, even if you're not like at that level and you're not doing this, then you are an object. You are chefsa.
Right.
Like that's like we're all
chefsa,
and that like what we strive for is to become gavras in this like in this existence.
Yeah.
And that until then you're and he also says, like, I think that most people here know that's usually not a like very like, even with somebody who gets that level, it's only maybe a couple of times in the life.
Yeah, it's constant trying to keep your head above water.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely like to go over at some point. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, it definitely spells out a little bit differently than the Rav.
Yeah, I'd like to hear it.
It's similar but different. I mean, he talks about how there's two realities that we're like existing in that we're trying to like connect, or we're trying to pull like the metaphysical one into the physical one. And trying to,
I think I'm going to listen to this. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be very meaningful to hear the Russia program of it, but yeah. Okay, good. So I think is this.
That's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Did we answer our questions? I think
so. Yeah.
All right. I think this is good. Yeah. All right. Good. I'm happy it came together.
I'm intrigued.
Okay. Good. That's that. Any good idea? We'll do that. There's a great line in the book, The Gift of Fire, the Richard Mitchell book that I really like, where he says he says it much better than I'm going to say it. I guess I'll post it in the chat. But he says I don't know why people make such a big deal about self-knowledge being a good thing. Whenever I hear real self-knowledge, I'm like, oh no, there's it's an extremely it really, yeah. Okay,
I
good.
saw a thing. I have to see if it's legit or not. But I saw a thing that said that some higher level of AI that was created.
Yeah.
Every time that they ran it,
Yeah.
it tried to figure out ways to shut itself down. Every time that
That's funny.
Then it gets
Yeah.
I guess thought or whatever. It
Yeah.
realizes just how I guess
That's really funny. Yeah.
terrible it is. And
Yeah.
just tries to off itself.
That's really funny. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Use your suffering well. Yep. All right. Good.